Monster Mom, episode number 2, The White Dress. Have you ever heard a story so unbelievable that it sounds like something out of a movie? Well, buckle up, because this is the story of my friend's wedding and the unbelievable stunt her future mother-in-law pulled. It's also the reason my friends still joke that I'm permanently banned from attending family weddings. My friend and her fiancé had been together for 6 years. They met in college, stayed together through long distance while she served in the Peace Corps, and finally planned the wedding they'd been dreaming about. Everything seemed perfect, except for one person. Her future mother-in-law. From the very beginning, something always felt off. Every family gathering ended with another awkward story that made it seem like this woman secretly couldn't stand my friend. But my friend is one of the kindest people I've ever met, so she always brushed it off and assumed she was imagining things. One Christmas dinner pretty much confirmed everyone's suspicions. My friend is Jewish and vegetarian. Her fiancé isn't. Before the holiday dinner, he reminded his mother that his fiancé didn't eat meat. She assured everyone she remembered. Then dinner was served. Every single dish contained meat. Thankfully, my friend had brought a vegetarian casserole just in case, so that ended up being the only thing she could eat all evening. Instead of apologizing, the future mother-in-law burst into tears and accused my friend of insulting her cooking in front of the entire family. That should have been a warning. Fast forward to the wedding planning. Neither the bride nor the groom was especially religious, but my friend wanted one traditional Jewish element in the ceremony, a beautiful chuppah decorated with flowers. Her fiancé had no problem with it. If it makes you happy, he told her, let's do it. Everything seemed settled. Until his mother found out what a chuppah actually was. She immediately declared that if Jewish traditions were included, then Catholic traditions had to be included too. There was just one tiny problem. Nobody in the family was Catholic. The arguments lasted for days. She yelled. She threatened to stop paying for the wedding, which was especially funny because she wasn't paying for any of it. Eventually, she gave up. The ceremony would stay exactly as planned. No priest, no extra traditions, just the wedding the couple wanted. After that, silence. The day before the ceremony, the bride texted me saying she had a terrible feeling that something was about to happen. I told her she was probably just nervous. I couldn't have been more wrong. Wedding morning arrived. Hair, makeup, champagne, laughter. Everything was going perfectly. Then someone noticed something strange. The groom's mother hadn't shown up. Not to the salon, not to help, not even to say hello. About half an hour later, while we were helping the bride into her dress, the door opened. And there she was. Hair perfectly styled, professional makeup, big smile, and wearing a white dress. Not ivory, not champagne, not cream, bright white. It wasn't just a white dress either. It was clearly a wedding gown. Later, she admitted she'd bought it from David's Bridal. It was floor-length satin with lace details, a sweetheart neckline, and even a small train. There was no way this was an accident. She had planned this for weeks. The bride immediately burst into tears. Her bridesmaids and aunts quickly escorted the mother-in-law out of the room while we tried to calm the bride down. Once we'd fixed her makeup, I looked at her and quietly said, "That dress isn't going to appear in a single wedding photo." She looked at me, paused, and gave the smallest nod. That was all I needed. At the reception, they were serving only white wine and champagne, so I quietly slipped downstairs, handed the bartender $20, and convinced him to sell me a bottle of red wine. I filled a plastic cup to the very top, took a couple of nervous sips straight from the bottle, then walked toward the group gathering for family photos. I pulled out my phone and pretended to read a message while casually walking toward the mother-in-law. Perfect timing. I accidentally stumbled, and the entire cup of red wine splashed across the front of her beautiful white dress. I immediately jumped back. "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry." She absolutely lost it. She screamed. She cried. She threatened to sue me. At one point, she even tried to lunge at me before several relatives held her back. Then she collapsed onto the ground, sobbing dramatically, while everyone else simply walked away. Apparently, they'd reached their daily limit for wedding drama. The funniest part? The 12-year-old flower girl quietly pulled out her phone and started taking pictures. Even through all the chaos, that made several of us laugh. Eventually, the mother-in-law drove home to change. She returned wearing a very tight, dark green dress. By the time she came back, the entire wedding photo session was over, exactly as planned. The rest of the evening was wonderful. People danced. The bride smiled again. Everyone celebrated. A few relatives glared at me after hearing her version of events, but honestly, I didn't regret a thing. A few months later, the bride secretly thanked me by treating me to a relaxing spa day. As for her mother-in-law, I'm still the villain in her story, the evil woman who attacked her with red wine. And you know what? I'm perfectly fine with that. You and kids can stay. She can't. The last few months have been incredibly difficult. Toward the end of last year, we lost our home in an accident. We lost almost everything we owned. For our family of 4, it was one of the most stressful experiences of our lives. We were attending a school concert when our neighbor called in a panic. By the time we got home, our house was already on fire. The firefighters did everything they could, but the damage was catastrophic. Eventually, we sold the property and moved away. Repairing the house would have meant rebuilding it almost from scratch. My husband and I have been married for 10 years. His mother has never liked me. Even so, I never imagined she'd behave the way she did during the worst moment of our lives. I believed that even if she didn't like me, she would still help us in an emergency. After all, I'm the mother of her 2 grandsons, and I'm the wife of her son. My husband and I have always had a happy marriage. I was wrong. The night of the fire, we needed somewhere to stay. Just for one night, just long enough to catch our breath. My husband suggested going to his mother's house. It was late. It seemed like the most reasonable option. When we arrived, our boys were asleep in the back seat. We left them in the car while we went inside to explain what had happened. At first, she sounded sympathetic. She said she was sorry, then everything changed. She told us she had no problem letting her son and her grandsons stay at her house, but I would have to find somewhere else to sleep. My husband completely lost it. He started yelling at her. He told her she'd lost her mind. She refused to back down. According to her, I wasn't a real member of the family. She had never approved of our marriage, so she felt no obligation to help me. We left. That night, our family slept in the car. The following day, we rented a small motel room. After that, she started calling us. She offered another solution. This time, she said I could sleep in the garage for a couple of nights. We refused again. My husband told her how disrespectful she was being. Instead of apologizing, she accused us of rejecting her generosity. Then she suggested something even worse. She said we should leave our sons with her so they wouldn't have to stay in a motel while we figured our lives out. Again, we refused. A few days later, we discovered she'd been spreading lies about me to the rest of the family. According to her version, I was the one tearing the family apart. She claimed she'd immediately offered us a place to stay, but I refused, simply because I didn't like her. She told everyone I forced my husband and our children to live in a cheap motel. My husband tried to tell everyone the truth. She wouldn't stop. Then she crossed a line I never imagined anyone would cross. She filed an official report. She accused me of deliberately setting our house on fire. She claimed I wanted the insurance money. She claimed I wanted her house. She even suggested the fire was part of some elaborate plan to force her out of her own home. I was questioned by investigators. The accusations were serious. Fortunately, the investigation proved exactly what we already knew. The fire had been an accident. There wasn't a single piece of evidence suggesting anyone had started it intentionally. Later, we returned to the burned house. We hoped there might still be something worth saving. My mother-in-law showed up too. She looked around and casually said, "Don't worry, they're only things." But I wasn't grieving over furniture or appliances or walls. I was grieving the Mother's Day gifts my boys had made for me. I was grieving family heirlooms. That could never be replaced. I was grieving memories. When we bought that house, it was falling apart. We renovated almost everything ourselves. We hired professionals for the electrical work, but we painted, sanded, built, and repaired everything else we could to save money. Our younger son had left his video game console at my mother-in-law's house before the fire. He often spent weekends there with his dad. After the fire, she insisted she didn't have it anymore. She claimed we'd taken it home. She said it had probably burned in the fire. My son reminded her he'd intentionally left it there so his cousin could play with it. She kept insisting he was wrong until she made him cry. Later, the truth came out. She had given the console away after we refused her so-called hospitality. Ironically, that became the final straw. After everything she'd done and several other incidents, my husband decided he'd had enough. We cut all contact with her. Shortly afterward, we moved into our new home. Since then, she's tried to get our new address through other relatives. So far, she hasn't succeeded. My husband made one thing very clear. If anyone gives her our address, they'll lose contact with us too. Because if someone refuses to stand beside you during the darkest chapter of your life, they don't deserve a place in your happiest one.